One of the most painful things, right, as a man that is nowhere near where he wants to be, nowhere near the level he wants to be. And people can say that's a bad way of thinking, but I think it's just me being honest with myself. The bad thing is the fact that you understand male competition and you understand this concept. And that every time you fall down, other people are getting in front of you, other men are getting in front of you in life. And as someone in this position right now, and they see a lot of men far ahead of you, like they look more handsome than you, they're all smarter than you, and etc. etc. The hard thing is to accept, that in itself and say, they're my competitors, they're my opponents, and I've got to fight these guys, and I'm fighting an uphill battle. It's like going into the boss battle before you've done all the levels before the boss battle, if you know what I mean. And that's a hard thing to accept. And it should be accepted to some extent, but you've got to realise that you're not going against these people. Like, two things. Number one is that your number one opponent is yourself. You're the only person getting in your own way to prevent you from, achieving new heights and becoming a better version of yourself. Number two is you shouldn't view these people as enemies, view these men as enemies because they are strong individuals. Why shouldn't you team up with them? And why? Because if you team up with them, you get more experience, you get more XP, and you can take on the boss together. You can take on the boss that is life together. You can ally your forces, ally your powers, your strengths and your weaknesses, maybe complement each other. You should view life like this. So, you need to stop being so obsessed over male competition and be more obsessed over a competition against yourself. Because I've never had an extremely productive, week when that whole week I'm thinking about, I'm walking down the street and I see a guy and I'm just like, oh, you're my opponent. It's just a toxic way of thinking. You should never view people like that. It's a toxic way of thinking. You should only view life as you being your number one opponent and the number one person stopping you. So, let's get out of our own way. We are our own opponents. And let's start fighting towards, becoming a better person, fighting against yourself, fighting against that resistance, step by step. Rather than seeing every man you pass on the street as an enemy. Like, that's a pretty toxic way to live, and that is not going to do well for your anxiety and stuff, is it? So, that's my number one recommendation. Male competition is very important to acknowledge, but you can't see them as your enemies. You can't see other men as your enemies. Alright, boys. Have a good one.